Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the second panel of Nizami Center COP29 discussions titled Balancing Mitigation, Adaptation and Resilience. I am Hakima El-Haite and I have the privilege to moderate this crucial panel featuring eminent leaders who have made significant contribution to the global climate agenda. We are on the eve of COP29, a COP that is not just another COP, but one that is decisive for sustaining trust. And I heard this term this morning, sustaining trust and addressing challenges, especially by the tumultuous conditions we are living now in the world. To set the scene, according to the IPCC, we are not on the track, and we heard it this morning, to keep the 1.5 degrees C objective alive. The 223 stocktake highlight, while efforts have been made, our collective efforts are still insufficient. We must reduce by 45% from 2010 level by 2030, only 6 years left, to reduce 45% of our emissions. We are at 8% decrease. And this is to limit warming at 1.5 degrees C. The indices, the national determined contribution, are still not enough ambitious. And we heard from His Excellency Kohozi this morning that if all the indices and all the commitments within the indices are implemented, we will still be at 2.5 degrees C. Let's ask ourselves what is happening now that we are at 1.3 degrees C warming. Today, the consequences of climate change are extremely severe. Climate disasters events caused approximately 3 billion losses in economy and are impacted 1.5 billion people all over the world. It's not exclusively the global south, all over the world, even in the north, in Europe, in the United States, Canada. Climate change is affecting the people, and hundreds of thousands of people are displaced because of climate disasters. And we should not forget that climate change, like the wars, is killing, because many deaths, especially women and young people, are dying during the climate disasters. So to mitigate, to adapt, and to build resilience requires an aggressive reduction of our CO2 emissions and the other patent gas, but it's, I will say, requires a complete shift in our model of development, our model of consumption, our model of production, our building, our transportation. This is exactly what was named by the Paris Agreement, the global transformation. So if we want to be on the right track, we need to implement the global transformation. But it requires also more funding. And here, I don't agree with what was said this morning. We need funding. And we need that the commitment made under the Paris Agreement are respected. Funding that are predictable, because countries need to have their strategies, they need to have their compass which is fixed, and their action plan. So funding predictable, accessible, and fairly distributed. Let me tell you that 91% of the funding on the finance are mitigation oriented, and 50% of this finance is on a base of loan. And we should not say that the private sector didn't invest. The private sector has invested as much as the public sector invested. So we need also a transparency framework which will define clearly the responsibilities and assess the progress and also the fulfillment of the commitment under the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. So we are at the eve of a challenging and complex COP, which is also has to tackle and to bring solution to a challenging and complex equation. And I'm happy that our special speakers today will enlighten us and bring some of the answers to the questions. So we have Habib Mikayilli, Chief of the Secretariat of COP29 Organizing Committee and Deputy Director of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Welcome, dear Mr. Habib. And His Excellency Ivo Josipovic, I know, it's not good, former President of Croatia, 2010-2015. His Excellency is a renowned composer and advocate for global integration, international cooperation, and legal frameworks, and also very good musician. Yeah. Maimunah, dear friend, she was freshly appointed as advisor on sustainable organization to the government of Malaysia, former executive director of UN Habitat 2018-2024, expert in urban resilience, SDGs, but also solid waste management. We are sitting in the same ward in the UN Zero Waste Initiative. And last but not least, John Fischer, former Prime Minister of Czech Republic, 2009-2010, who has a strong expertise in economy, statistics, finance, policies, and institutional resilience. So welcome to the second panel, and let me begin by you, Mr. Habib. Please let us set the scene with you as first speaker, and let me ask you, what have COP presidency done this 6 months, and what are your expected outcome for the COP?
Thank you, Madam. I'm very delighted to be among such distinguished panelists. I agree with you that this is Baku COP will be very decisive and historic COP because we cannot overcome the adverse effect of the climate change without funding. What we achieved during the 6 months is that our COP team visited the world capitals, engaged in consultations with countries, with different negotiation groups, in order to hear their views, to understand their priorities, stance. And it was quite successful. And now, early this month, after the Bonn meeting, we are entering the active phase of our presidency. We unofficially assumed the COP29 presidency, unofficially. And of course, it will be reflected in our activity, in our performance. We are going to sharpen our messages. Regarding the main expectation from the Baku COP, of course, this is the new finance goal. Despite the modest progress that has been achieved in Bonn, I remain optimistic because, yes, there are many contention issues as highlighted by lead negotiator. Two contention issues. First, what would be the size of the new collective goal? And second, who would pay? And my expectation is that both developing and developed world, I hope, will be able to put aside their disagreement, to go extra mile and to find common ground. And I agree that, of course, these two contention issues cannot be resolved at the negotiators' level. Political will determination is key. And hypothetically, of course, geopolitical tension may negatively affect the consensus spirit. But I hope that the key players, key actors, would be able to achieve breakthrough like it was prior 2015, before the Paris Agreement. Therefore, I believe that, inshallah, we will be able to make a deal in Baku, because it is a must. We have no luxury not to adopt the new goal. And again, but what would be the size of the figure? At this stage, it would be very difficult to predict. I will not hide that Azerbaijan, being part of the NAM and G77, we are for the Baku Accord that would take into account the legitimate interest of the developing countries, and especially least developed countries and small island developing nations. Because all are affected, but not like small island developing nations. And I would like to highlight that supporting small island nations will be among our priorities. And I will talk on this issue, but one of the priority of Azerbaijan is that we should not blame each other who is guilty for global warming, or in the same line, we don't accept any kind of attack on the oil and gas producing countries. We believe that COP is the place of cooperation, not confrontation. If we bring, the ideological battle, ideological disagreement to the COP, it will be very difficult. But again, I'm quite optimistic that we will be able to have a deal in Baku. And also, what is important, not only achieving this deal in Baku, but also how to implement it. Okay, we can achieve a breakthrough in Baku with a new figure, which is, of course, higher than the current one, 100 billion. But what will be the implementation? It will be just pledging, or the developed countries will contribute financially for this new goal. There are so many issues here, and again, I hope that we will be able to make a deal in Baku.
Thank you, Habib. You remind me the president of Tuvalu. He used to say within any negotiation, save Tuvalu, you will save the world. And you are right, and congratulations for the presidency of COP29, because if you tackle the problem with the small island, and I heard that President Aliyev has set a fund to finance and to support the small island. So you are right, congratulations. Just a small question concerning the objective. I think that the Global South is not waiting for an increase in the amount of financing, even though we heard 300 billion, 600 billion, there are many figures, but what the Global South is waiting for is the definition of the framework, precising exactly who is paying what, to which purpose the money is going, and how the money is fairly distributed between the different countries. This is what we are waiting for COP29, and I hope that that will be under the transparency mechanism, maybe. Thank you so much. Mr. President, Ivo, it's more simple because the other name, I'm mistaking it. Please tell us your impression concerning the enabling environment of COP29 and how to make this COP29. And let me just clarify that Azerbaijan is the host of a UN, United Nations Convention, and this is the responsibility of all the nations to deliver. So we all have the responsibility to make it successful. So how can we help and support COP29 to be a successful COP?
One of two keywords, mitigation and resilience, is very important for the success of the conference, definitely. But there are many obstacles. Unfortunately, they are distributed. Obstacles are distributed between selfishness of states, selfishness of politicians, and selfishness of business. So from time to time, it looks to me that they do not understand the problem, really. But the other manifest of obstacles is also populism. Populism, especially on the side of politicians and political parties, and we witnessed it very recently during European elections. Green parties failed completely. Also, the, let's say, mainstream parties are leaving green politics. They are leaving green politics because they are not popular. They are not popular because of non-compensatory measures by states, but also because of big industry is not supporting those politics. There is also a very important obstacle, I call it Euro or Western centrism. It's very important to stress that big and important countries, developed countries, European countries, United States, are watching everything from their glasses. They do not understand, or they don't want to understand, the problem of less developed countries, especially African countries, and it's very connected to distribution of money, yes. And definitely, we should think how to distribute more equally money envisaged for transformation of our society. Then also we have double standards. When there is a question whether we are going to import cheap electrical cars, the answer is no. Why not? They're too cheap. There are subsidies from some different states. But in the same time, we are blind to recognize that European countries are subsidizing car industry very heavily, especially one of them, France. Then we have also interest connected to different wars, 51 wars. Do you know how much money is spent on these wars every single minute? Much more than in climate goals, unfortunately. So peace is precondition for successful fight for better future or for future at all of humanity. Then we are going to be exposed to very important crises. It's a water crisis, it's food crisis, and of course migrations, probably even wars, because some people should be expelled by nature from their homes, especially small islands. Today it's small islands, but tomorrow it will be Amsterdam. It will be Italian cities, Croatian cities on the coast as well. So we have to understand that it's not fight just for small islands, it's fight for our civilization. Then, of course, it's a question how can we transform our industries. Probably there will be more competent experts for this than myself, but I have to stress that it's very important that international law is going to support necessary changes, including establishment of new human rights connected with environment. It's very important. So if you ask me whether I'm optimist or pessimist of the future of humanity, then my brain says, be careful, not be too big optimist, but my heart says, be optimist. It's very important because without optimism, there are no results. And of course, now we are witnessing, and we are going to witness to the most important things for humanity. European Championship in football and Olympic Games. But the most important games are games between angry and wounded nature and irresponsible humanity. So what's very important, and it's based, good basis for populism, for neglecting green politics, it's awareness of future or dangers we are facing with. And unfortunately, the best thing how to make it aware to wide population is to have big storms breaking football championship and making games impossible, at least for 1 or 2 games. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me ask you another question. As I know that you have been leading the negotiation for the cooperation between integration of Croatia within the EU. As what advocacy strategy can an international cooperation man advise to COP29 to make the nations more ambitious and more delivering on COP29?
COP29 is, in my perception, was one of the most important meetings this year. Not only the present year, but probably for several years, because we are deciding, or our leaders are going to decide about our future. They are really going to decide whether humanity will be faced with so big, probably unresolving challenges, or we are going to adapt our society or our economy. So it cannot be resolved, problems cannot be resolved just by decision of, I don't know, European Union, China, the United States, or whatever, but really the whole globe should be integrated in action to save our future. So I think that COP29 is really very important, and I have a very, very big expectation. Probably, in my perception, COP29 should be not just panel for discussion, but to produce obligatory international law instruments binding all countries with strong guarantees that all countries will follow them.
Yeah, you know that under the Paris Agreement, there is the long-term strategies, and all the nations are in the obligation to submit their long-term strategies, which are aligned with the Paris Agreement to the UNFCCC. And till now, I think that very, very few countries have submitted their long-term strategy. And this is, it's exactly what you said. If there is no coherency on the international level, which is coherent also with the national policies, we cannot go.
That was the reason I mentioned the Olympic Games and the race between angry nature and irresponsible humanity. Angry nature is quicker and quicker, and we are not quick enough to follow it and to prevent consequences.
Thank you. Now let's ask Maimunah. Maimunah, you were also former mayor, and we know that 80% of the decision related to climate action are taken by mayors and by local authorities. Cities and local authorities are also the reservoir of finance, innovation, expertise. So how can local authorities contribute to increase our ambitions and reinforce our national determined contributions?
Thank you so much for that questions and referring my previous job as a mayor for 7 years in city of Penang with around 2 million population, and also my experience as 6 years as a executive director of UN Habitat. And I would like to answer your questions, Kimi, for 3 requests or 3 answers and 1 observation, if I may. And you already mentioned just now that cities is the engine of growth. Cities have center of innovation. Cities consume 70% of carbon emission and also emit 70% carbon emission, consume 70% of energy. And this is where the people will move to the cities in order to get jobs, and where the pollution and also the hub of talents and hub of innovation and hubs of financial. So I would like to also to suggest that when you look into COP29, we heard from this morning, COP29 to be an enabling COP. COP29 to have to look into action, and COP29 to look into the inclusivity. COP29 will be the financing COP. So I believe that from my own experience, cities can be a critical players to move flash into action. Why I say that? From the observation, I think from the report by the UN Habitat, I was quite surprised and a bit sad to say that only 27 of the 194 countries NDC have strong urban content. Only 27%, whereas the action is on the ground. Whilst 47% of the NDC address both adaptation and mitigation in cities, but less attention is paid to better understanding the challenges to what they are actually responding. This is very important.
Let me just ask you a question. We have involved cities in all the COPs, all the COPs. I remember when we organized COP22, I have received 4,000 mayors all over the world. So cities are involved. So now why they are not involved within the process?
Yeah. Why? Because that is one of my requests here, the first request, to endorse that local determinant contribution.
That's it.
To be part of the NDC. If that can be endorsed in COP29, I think there will be a historic moment. Because cities are the ones who are implementing all this policy. So, not the least developed countries, so include LDC into the NDC. I think that is one of my proposal, my request to the COP29. Because when the Excellency Ismail mentioned about the 4 Ps, public, private, people partnership, I myself, as a former mayor, I introduced these 4 Ps way back in 2011, and 4R in 2011. 4R, rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle. You have to rethink. So I think this is very important. I want to suggest that COP29 to endorse local determinant contribution, LDCs as an input to the NDCs, and this will become the investment plan. When you talk about the next topic I want to suggest is financial architecture. Once you have the LDC in the NDC, then you can include the plan to look into the reforming or whatever to strengthening the financial architecture so that the funding will trickle down to the right recipient and through the right process and not so many bureaucratic. So I think this is important to include the 4 Ps just now, also to include the private sector in the investment. So I think this is important for us to look into the framework. Mayors can help that. I already reached out to more than 1,600 cities when I was at UN Habitat. I just finished the World City Summit in Singapore on the 1st to the 3rd of June. And they are really would like to see that the financial architecture being reformed to include them so that they can be a recipient. You can put that in terms of the transparency, auditing, monitoring. I think we are ready. I mean, the mayors are ready to accept that. That is the the second, and there are also suggestions in the Urban SDG Finance Commission to have a Green Cities Guaranteed Fund at the local level. This is maybe, if you can have that, this is one of the areas. And the third is that we talk about outcomes. We talk about resolution. In COP27, we already have SURGE, Sustainable Urban Resilience for the next generation. We have also put up 5 areas: urban housing, urban energy, urban waste consumption, urban mobility, and urban water. And in COP28, we have CHAM, Coalition of High Ambition for Multi-Level Partnership. COP29 implement this. Don't look for another launching, another new ways of launching a new program. Implement the what that we already have into COP27 and COP29. And this implementation, hopefully that COP29 will come up with a communique, roadmap, action plan, and so that we can look back at COP30, what we have been achieved all this while. So that I think this is very important for us to look into the inclusive planning. We talk about inclusivity, involving the integrated planning, land use planning, financial planning, and also in terms of the political planning is also part of it. And one last one is my observation. I've agreed with the President just now that we need a peaceful environment. We need a peaceful environment to implement whatever outcome that we get. So there is no development without peace. There is no peace without development. So I think all this action, balancing, adaptation, mitigation, resilience, all these need a peaceful and enabling environment to implement and to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maimunah. And let me tell you that your recommendation is not an easy one, because the LDCs were proposed, and you know that we were proposing them strongly to the UNFCCC. But we had a huge resistance from government. They don't want competition, because if we have LDCs under the framework of the UNFCCC, then they will be eligible for finance, and the money will be shared. So I think that that will be a transformational action to be held, and if the presidency of COP29 has this courage to advocate for the LDCs, we will see that we will deliver on the next NDCs. Thank you so much. And I agree together with you when you're talking about peace. The only thing we didn't hear figures about the impact of war. You know that the only impact of the only war in Ukraine is releasing 200 million tons of CO2 emissions, and to rebuild everything which was destroyed, we will release 400 million CO2 emission. So I'm not talking about Gaza because we don't have the figures, but already in Ukraine, the cost of war is already huge, and I salute the proposal of Maria, who proposed that during COP29 we should have a day for peace, because we cannot achieve on the Paris Agreement and reach the objective without peace. We should focus, investing our energy and money on climate. Your Excellency, Mr. Fischer, can we sustain the growth with decreasing emissions? This is the question of all the private sector. We talked about the private sector, and I want to remind COP29 presidency that there is already a tool under the Paris Agreement called the Marrakesh Partnership, which is a framework bringing together government, bankers, institutions, private sectors on a sectorial basis to sit together and to find solutions together in terms of policies and invest. So the question of all the private sector, can we sustain the growth with these restrictions brought by the climate negotiations?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Firstly, I would like to express some thoughts on the look at the COP29. COP29, this is clearly, it's hope, and this is opportunity. And that's not only the opportunity for people coming to the COP29 and decide how to proceed further on. That's the opportunity which should be, and I believe that it will be provided to everyone living in this planet. Climate hasn't got any borderlines. Everyone is, let's say, exposed to climate changes, to carbonization, to emissions. So I do believe that and this is the important thing, that the Azerbaijani authorities, politicians, administration, has been doing all the best to prepare the event, the huge event as COP29 actually is, with the highest level of responsibility. The preparatory phase is very professional, and I'm very glad that the potential of the NGIC has been used, and the NGIC and the capacity of the members of NGIC family is, let's say, squeezed out for the purpose of the good, appropriate preparation of the COP29. It was very good news, which we had before in the previous panel from the side of a representative of Azerbaijan, or lead negotiator. We don't see our role as Azerbaijan to have more sections, more sessions, more I don't know what, compared with Dubai before. That's nice that you see in Azerbaijan that it should be to the point, it should be decisive, and I do believe that let's say, this meeting on which the eyes of the mankind will be turned to in several months brings not only good debates, exchange of opinions, but also some conclusions which should be taken into operation. And this is what we actually need behind. We are behind schedule as concerns the climate changes. That's right. And the important is the responsibility of the politicians is, let's say, absolute, and it can be, let's say, changed by anyone else. The voice, on the other hand, the voice of scientific community, researchers, the NGOs representatives, international organizations anyway, governmental and non-governmental as well. This is something that politicians have to listen to, not to be deaf and not to be cynical, because time is running out. Actually, time is running out, believe me. So the preparatory works is a guarantee that COP29 will not become a miracle, because miracle, that's something which normally hasn't happened, but it will be the good event with good conclusions and with the issues which could be put into the operation. So then it was very interesting information, by the way, and very interesting figure. I don't know whether Rosen brought it. That's the information or the indicator that 80% of emissions is produced by G20 countries.
80%.
And
G20.
G20, okay. And over 70% is produced by G7 countries. It clearly pointed out who is responsible, because there are producers of emissions and there are the consumers. And consumers are, let's say, universal. Universal. That's the consequences of producing emissions. It's, let's say, everyone is exposed at this planet, exposed to emissions, to having the health problems, health issues. I don't know what's the suffering with the dramatic changes in weather, and I don't know what else. So this is very specific responsibility. They have the representatives of this region, of this part of the planet. The question is, and you mentioned it, you put a question, whether the emissions decoupling or emissions reducing is compatible with economic growth. This is absolutely crucial question, absolutely crucial issue. And this is very interesting. There are two groups of, let's say, people and two groups of views. There are some people saying, okay, that's incompatible, and if we want to solve emissions or decoupling of emissions, relative decoupling, absolute decoupling of emissions, we have to slow down or even to stop the growth. We have to sacrifice the growth in favor of decoupling of emissions. The second group on the other side is saying, okay, this problem with the emissions, that's not so dramatic anyway. So the first is growth, and let's go on as we have been used, which is quite cynical, and we see it. All these scientific studies, analyses clearly say that the decoupling, or at least decreasing of, reducing the emissions, is compatible with economic growth. There are a lot of studies, they say it, they approve it, and this is the way out. But how to do it, it's up to the governments, international organizations, and we have to see, you mentioned wars. This is not only the multipolar world or multipolar planet in which we actually live, this is also multi-crisis planet. Multi-crisis, wars, health issues, food, water, and of course climate. A lot of these crises are interconnected. So that's, let's say, time to stop talking and to do anything. If I say to do anything, that's the problem of the usage of and exploitation of modern technologies, because paradoxically, that were technologies who brought during the last 205 years, when the Industrial Revolution came to the stage, there were technologies which was the drivers of the progress, which was the driver of improving of the well-being, standard of living, slowly, of course, with a lot of troubles. But there were technologies, and that were the same technologies which brought this world to this damaged climate, pollution of the air, pollution of the water anyway. So that's the role of the technologies is twofold. And what we have to do is to use technologies for, let's say, to be used for solving the climate changes. The last thing, private sector, and I will end up. Private sector, that's the crucial issue. The problem is how to do it. Private sector and business is not charity. It's not charity. They has to be motivated anyway. Governments and international organizations have the enhanced, what they have enhanced, taxation system, new ways of the cooperation with private sector to bring the opportunities. And of course, there is a lot of things which banks have in their hands, which are very important when crediting anyway, so to use the, let's say, creditory policy towards the business sector when providing them with credit. International financial institutions, extremely, extremely important, but they didn't fall from heaven anyway. They were produced by governments and the winners of the Second World War, the Bretton Woods institution. That is my mentioned anyway, and that's the role to governments and politicians to think through what to do with the structure of these institutions, organizations. I don't think that they should be swept and disappear anyway, but to reform them in favor of solution of the current problems of this world, and in favor not only the richest, but also the poorest ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. I think that Mr. Habib wants to react. Yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to highlight a couple of points. First, COP29 is not just Azerbaijan event. This is the UN event, and we also one party of almost 200 parties to the Framework Convention. We cannot force or impose our terms to other countries to agree. My second point is that why I believe in the possibility of agreeing on new climate goal in Baku, because otherwise, imagine that otherwise the global climate architecture, including Paris Agreement, would simply collapse. Third point, as
Why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that the global framework will collapse if we don't have the new goal?
Because therefore we are saying that Baku COP is historic COP, because any failure would definitely negatively influence the upcoming COPs. Will negatively affect. It will also litmus test for the multilateralism. It will also negatively affect the trust between developing and developing countries. And the third point, as raised by the President Plevneliev, what is important, vision or money? Yes, on one hand, I agree that, yes, vision is important because each and every government has the responsibility for the development, for its own development, or to improve the socio-economic condition of its own population. But at the same time, we cannot also backtrack what we have already agreed. And we cannot reopen or renegotiate the previously agreed document, including Paris agreement. Yeah. The third, another point, yes, my president recently proposed to establish the special fund to support small island nations. The idea is that we don't want only to talk to support their views, but also we would like to implement some concrete projects. And one of them is exactly establishment of this special fund that we will contribute. And also in terms of practical projects, I remember the meeting with Foreign Minister of the Bahamas. In terms of, for example, adaptation, he was saying that what we need at this stage for our country is building seawalls. For example, the seawalls that Bahamas has at this stage can successfully resist to the Dorian storms, but not the stronger ones. And another remark you said about the courage of the presidency. Yes, our approach is to lead by example. Therefore, we are not only encourage other countries to present NDCs, to present their BTRs, long-term strategy. We are also submit our reports, our action plans by, inshallah, by COP29. And another remark from my side, you talk about the different proposal. For example, one of the important topics is how to expand the donor bases. How to expand the donor bases. Yes, everything can be discussed, but at the same time, anything beyond the Paris Agreement should be voluntary. You cannot force the developing countries to pay for something that they are not guilty. Therefore, again, both sides has its own rights, and therefore our vision is that we should stop blaming each other, and we should find common ground. And we believe that the 4 years successful non-chairmanship, where we managed to unite all countries within the movement, will allow us to act in good faith and encourage other nations to have agreement in Baku.
Thank you so much. President Envoy, want to react? No. Let me remind what His Excellency Mr. Korzi was saying this morning, and I was concerning the finance. I think that we are not, and I'm relieved to hear you say that we are not renegotiating the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is there, and we have to fulfill the promises. And the first, I think, main objective of COP29 should be to sustain or to rebuild, because I think we lost the trust of all the global South who is watching now at Baku and want to come to Baku and to see that we are not making pledges, we are not making announcements, but we are committed to respect all the promises given by the Paris Agreement. Second, any COP is negotiated under the principle of common and differentiated responsibility, and this is what it was said this morning. The G20 are emitting 80% of the CO2 emissions. So our president was saying we should be just and fair and be the guardian of justice during COP28. And the last point is we cannot encourage and attract private sector if our policies as nations and governments are not giving the right signal. You cannot demultiply, and the objective is to multiply by 3 renewable energy. And there, where I agree with you, is that we will continue to live with a mix with fossil fuel. I cannot imagine that tomorrow all the economies relying on fossil fuel will just phase out. They maybe will phase down with a transition to renewables. But now we have to multiply by 3 our renewable energy park, and this is what was agreed in COP28. The problem is that the technology exists, the know-how exists, and the finance exists, the private sector is committed, and my question for you, why aren't we moving on the right path to implement? Yes?
Okay. I think there should be clear rules about financing that says, firstly, fairness. That means those countries who are spoiling our environment more should participate more. Secondly, there should be also clear rules for solidarity, how to help those poor countries to follow the goals. And of course, third, to be aware of reality. The government can just have 2 ways how to produce money, by printing money, which is not good policy, or by taxing policy. And who will be subject to taxation? In my opinion, all those companies, especially companies who are contributing to bad development of our surroundings. So, but the problem is, and the obstacle is selfishness as well, and of course, influence of big business to politics.
Thank you. Yeah?
As a concrete example, I think one shortcoming that we should rectify is to improve access to the fund, especially for the small island nations. Because many of them, they have not access to this fund. There is fund, but they have no access. Let's be honest, we cannot expect country whose population is just 10,000 to prepare good report, a report that meet all reporting obligations. No. Therefore, another issue, again, I refer to the Bahamas, said that since Bahamas is the high-income country, they cannot get funding from the different funds. Another issue, by 2030, if I'm not mistaken, 6 small island nations will become high-income country. In this case, it means that they will not be able to benefit from the official development assistance. Mm-hmm. No, this is not a right approach. Sometimes, one size fits all doesn't work here. And sometimes there should be, positive discrimination.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes?
Just a quick intervention concerning the funding or financing the process. That's pretty clear that what has been so far decided is not enough, and the problem is how to proceed. And this issue and this problem has, let's say, two sides, two faces anyway. How to create? How to create? I mean, to create a fund, and how to use. And that's very closely interconnected, and we need the rules of the game on the both sides. Who should create it and who will be responsible for using it, exploiting it, allocating it, and so on and so forth. It's extremely complicated job, but it has to be done. It has to be done, and no way out anyway, no way out. That's the first thing. Other thing, and I forgot it to mention it before, and I would like to speak a little bit about it very, very briefly. Let's be realistic. Let's be realistic, because I see that the low ambitions as well as the overboosted ambitions both can be the enemies of the progress. The example of the overestimated or the measures with the overestimated expectation, and that's classical what happened in the EU, and this is Green Deal. Very ambitious, over-ambitious, excellently, let's say, it was nice to speak about that. Leaders finally agreed, some of them with pleasure, some of them so not with so pleasure. And now the debate, having on mind the results of the European votes to European Parliament, other things, who are the leaders and I don't know what, even from Brussels, clearly we are listening to the voices clearly saying we have to be more realistic. This Green Deal should, let's say, stay, but to be a little bit reshaped, became more realistic, and then this is the way how to proceed. So what's the warning from these some overestimated ambitions? So if we stay realistic, we are ready to, let's say, approach and to achieve progress. That's it.
Thank you so much, Maimunah.
I would like to continue to the accessibility to funding. I think this is a very important. Apart from the accessibility, we also have to look at the capacity to spend. the capacity building, either at the national level or even at the local level. I think this is very important. Even I myself, when I was a mayor, I have some funding, but I don't know how to fill in the form, how to create a project, and how to spend the money. But I think this is not only faced by the local government, but it's also faced by many of the national government, because when I was in Nairobi, I had the opportunity to travel to many countries during the, for example, the Cyclone Idai in Mozambique. And when I talked to the mayor then at that time, said that, yes, you, after the Cyclone Idai, you all the funding institution come to my city. Good. I said that he appreciate that. But you need to let me know, and also need to help me to come up with the mechanism, to come up with the plan. Because I know that if you come and build the same house at the same place where the people need, you're just waiting for the next cyclone to wash it away, because that is the place where it's below sea level. So I need integrated, I need planning, land use planning, which I don't have the capacity to draw the plan. So I think this is very important, to go to the very basic. The reality is that they have money, but how to spend, and then where to spend the money, so that we can get the great impact. I think that is one area that I would like to point. Another one is also now, we are talking about many construction, private sector on the construction. 40% of the construction building is emit carbon emission. CO2 emission. And the needs of the building by 2030, we already have at least 50% of the building needs by 2030 is already built now. How about the retrofitting? How can we look into that? And also 75% of the building that is needed by 2050 is not built yet. Let us build the capacity, let us build the planning, let's look into the creative, and at the same time, the affordable alternative to the renewable energy. Just to share with you one example, when I was in Singapore, a mayor from Cape Town, you know that South Africa has no water, I think it's a few years ago. And they said this is very simple and research and technology, where the lake was dried due to the plant which absorbed a lot of water. By removing the plant, they can retain 1/3 of the water for the needs of the city. There's no expensive innovation, but the knowledge of the nature-based solution, and then this need to be shared with many cities. So I think this is the areas that I would like to stress. Thank you.
Thank you, Maimunah. Thank you. Let me, we are running out of time and I need to give the floor to the audience. Let me ask you one final question. In one sentence, or if you are very brief, one word, what will be your message for COP29? Your Excellency, Mr. Fischer. One sentence or one word, what is your message for the presidency of COP29?
This is very cool.
Very difficult.
This is very cool. Very difficult to send out one message in one word or in one sentence. The only advice is, let's say, stick on what you have started. That's very good, that's thoughtful, that's to the point, and this is the guarantee, and that's the pillar that the COP29 can happen well. And I do believe that it will go well, it will happen well, and with good, let's say, conclusions and the...
Thank you. Maimunah.
Yeah, for me is that the COP29 will be the action-oriented COP with clear framework for implementation to achieve Paris Agreement, SDG, and New Urban Agenda through LDC, local determinant contribution, through LA, not Los Angeles, through local action, and by LF, local finance. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Excellency. One word? Can you do it in one
Let's
word?
be realistic. Let's do impossible.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will definitely stick to
Yeah,
what we have done so far. We will definitely stick to what we have done so far, and of course, making a deal in Baku is important not only because of our legacy, but also in terms of meeting the legitimate aspirations of the developing countries. It's very important.
Habib, do you have any message for all the ambassadors of Nizami Center you have here?
I think,
How can we support COP29?
yeah, because we have always benefited from the wisdom of the Nizami Jadam International Center, and we very much appreciate their input on different issues. For example, we very much appreciate in Azerbaijan that Madam Maimunah Sharif was the first head of the UN international organization that visited the liberated territories. It is very important for us. But what is our expectation? The Nizami Janzavi International Center's members, they are representing different parts of the world. Developing countries, developed countries, maybe they can push their own country to work in the spirit of compromise, again, to put aside the disagreements and to achieve the historic breakthrough in Baku.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. This is the final word. Let's move together to support COP29, to push and to advocate for consensus and to advocate for making this COP successful. I reiterate what I said at the beginning of this meeting. The COP presidency is responsible for diplomacy, security, logistics, but not for the outcome of the COP. This is our common responsibility, and this is what we need to do all together to make this COP successful, because it's for the future of this world, for our future, not the future of the planet, because if we are gone, the planet will feel better. So thank you so much for listening to us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much to the distinguished panel. I wanted to ask a general question, because today morning we heard a lot about innovation, science and technology, and I wanted to understand what kind of innovation technology you think is currently underutilized and holds the biggest promise for the themes of adaptation and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question? Yes, the floor is yours.
Very briefly, but I think that more answers to your question you will get in one of the next panels, which are, let's say, devoted or dedicated to the technologies, innovation and science, anyway, in the climate solution or mitigation of the climate problems or climate changes. Any advanced technology, which we know, including the IT, communication, vehicles, artificial intelligence, progress in technical branches, progress in, I don't know where, everywhere, in medicine, could be used for mitigating the problems in the mitigating of climate, impact of climate changes anyway. So otherwise, in the specific panel, I wonder what I will, let's say, will be listening to at this panel, but it's actually for 2 hours, not for 2 minutes.
I believe in technology, and I think that our hope is that the technology will help us to solve and to tackle the problem of climate change, because we see our limits. Well, with everything which is existing today, we are not able and capable to tackle climate change. So I believe and I hope that we will be able one day to sequestrate CO2 emissions, that technology will bring enough advancement to allow us to tackle climate change. And I fully support the fund of, to create a fund to invest on innovation, because here we have another problem. We are not investing enough on innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I think all of you are hungry and the lunch is waiting for you. Thank you. Thank you for our speakers. Thank you so much.